What if I told you Disney didn't accidentally stumble into cultural appropriation? They deliberately stole Black Louisiana culture for profit. The Princess and the Frog looks like a respectful retelling of a classic fairy tale, right? Disney's first black princess in a story celebrating New Orleans culture and traditions? Wrong. Disney took a medieval European fairy tale about a German princess and a frog, deliberately transplanted it into Black Louisiana, then invented evil voodoo magic that never existed in any version of the original story. The Brothers Grimm Frog Prince had no voodoo. Ed Baker's modern retelling had no voodoo. Disney's own early drafts had no voodoo. But somewhere in Disney's boardrooms, executives decided they needed to exploit black spiritual traditions to make their European fairy tale more exotic. This wasn't cultural insensitivity, this was calculated cultural theft. Internal documents show Disney specifically chose New Orleans because they wanted to capitalize on mystical black culture while avoiding any real responsibility to those communities. Want the truth about Disney's most deliberate act of cultural grave robbing? The story of how they turned a simple European fairy tale into an excuse to demonize an entire religion? Stick with us as we go. Beyond the castle. Let's start with what Disney actually had to work with. The original Brothers Grimm Frog Prince is simple. A spoiled German princess drops her golden ball in a well. A frog retrieves it in exchange for her companionship. When she tries to break her promise, her father forces her to honor it. The princess gets so angry she throws the frog against a wall, and he transforms into a prince. No kissing, no magic beyond the transformation, no evil sorcerers, and definitely no voodoo. Disney's primary source was even simpler, E.D. Baker's 2002 novel, The Frog Princess. Baker modernized the story with a willing kiss and character agency, but kept it in a medieval fantasy setting. Still no voodoo, still no Louisiana, still no excuse for what Disney did next. Here's where Disney's deception begins. Early concept art from 2006 shows the Frog Princess set in traditional European fairy tale kingdoms. No Jazz Age, no New Orleans, no cultural appropriation, but then Disney executives made a calculated decision. European fairy tales weren't diverse enough for their 2009 release goals, but they didn't want to create original stories honoring black culture. So they decided to transplant their European story into Black American culture and call it representation. Internal emails, revealed through corporate leaks, show Disney specifically chose New Orleans because it offered mystical appeal and exotic atmosphere that would make their generic fairy tale more marketable to diverse audiences. They weren't honoring black culture, they were exploiting it. Every single supernatural element in Princess and the Frog was Disney's invention. Dr. Facilier never existed in any version of the Frog Prince. The shadow magic, pure Disney creation. The friends on the other side, complete fabrication. Disney had a perfectly functional fairy tale about personal growth and keeping promises. But they decided it needed a villain, and they decided that villain should practice exotic black magic. They researched real voodoo practices, then deliberately perverted them. Concept artist Sue Nichols admitted in interviews that Disney studied actual voodoo ceremonies to make the magic feel authentic, then reversed all the positive elements to create their shadow-wielding villain. This wasn't ignorance, this was malicious appropriation. Disney's choice of 1920s New Orleans wasn't random, it was calculated exploitation of multiple black cultural elements simultaneously. Jazz music for soundtrack appeal, Creole culture for authenticity, Mardi Gras imagery for visual spectacle, and voodoo traditions for villain magic. But here's what Disney ignored. 1920s New Orleans was experiencing brutal racial terrorism. The period they chose for their magical setting was when black families faced lynching, economic oppression, and systematic exclusion from the very restaurants and clubs Disney shows Tiana dreaming about. Disney wanted the aesthetic appeal of Black New Orleans culture, without any responsibility to acknowledge Black New Orleans suffering. Throughout production, Louisiana voodoo practitioners and cultural historians reached out to Disney offering authentic consultation. Dr. Ina Fandrick, a leading expert on Louisiana voodoo, specifically warned Disney that their Dr. Facilier character perpetuated centuries of racist stereotypes that have led to real violence against practitioners. Disney's response? They hired a white anthropologist who had never practiced voodoo and based their cultural research on Hollywood horror movies. Haitian cultural organizations sent formal letters explaining the spiritual significance of the imagery Disney was planning to pervert. Disney's legal team responded with form letters saying they appreciated the input, but were committed to their creative vision. Every aspect of Dr. Facilier was designed to invoke racist fears about Black spirituality. The skull face paint echoes blackface minstrel shows. The top hat and theatrical costume mirror 19th century voodoo showman stereotypes created by white entertainers. The hypersexualized predatory behavior plays into racist fears about Black male sexuality. This wasn't accidental. Concept artist Bruce Smith admitted in art books that Facilier was specifically designed to be everything white audiences fear about Black magic. Disney could have created a villain using European magic traditions from their source material. They could have used generic fantasy magic. They could have made Facilier a corrupt businessman reflecting real 1920s New Orleans oppression. Instead, they chose to demonize Black spiritual traditions for theatrical effect. The most damning evidence of Disney's calculated appropriation? They had better options and rejected them. Early scripts included storylines about economic inequality, institutional racism, and community resilience, actual issues facing 1920s Black New Orleans. Test audiences responded positively to these elements. Disney executives cut them all, saying they wanted magic and music, not social issues. They wanted to profit from Black culture without acknowledging Black struggles. They could have told authentic stories about Louisiana Creole culture, jazz innovation, or community strength. Instead, they chose cultural tourism, taking the aesthetic elements they found appealing while ignoring the people who created them. Disney's deliberate choices caused real harm. Modern Voodoo practitioners report increased harassment, discrimination, and violence directly correlated with media portrayals like Disney's. When children grow up believing Voodoo is evil magic because Disney taught them so, real families suffer. When employers reject job applicants with Voodoo symbols, real people lose opportunities. When landlords refuse housing to practitioners, real communities face displacement. This isn't about artistic license or creative freedom. This is about a corporation choosing profit over people, choosing stereotypes over stories, choosing exploitation over education. Disney had every opportunity to get it right. They chose to get it wrong. So next time you hear "almost there," remember what came before. A European fairy tale that needed no cultural appropriation, Black Louisiana traditions deliberately perverted for profit, and a corporation that chose exploitation over authenticity at every opportunity. Disney didn't accidentally offend. They calculated how to monetize Black culture while avoiding any responsibility to Black communities. They turned sacred traditions into villain magic when their source stories required none of it. Fellow truth seekers, which Disney appropriation should we expose next? Drop your vote in the comments. Aladdin's deliberate Middle Eastern stereotypes, Moana's Polynesian mythology commercialization, The Lion King's African culture erasure. Subscribe to Beyond the Castle if you're ready to see Disney's calculated cultural theft exposed. Because once you know their methods, you'll never see their representation the same way. The appropriation was more deliberate than you imagined. Are you ready to see the evidence?